Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we explore the profound power of connection, resilience, and understanding. Today, we bring you a tale of love, heartbreak, and redemption. A wedding day disrupted by an unexpected arrival and the life-changing truths that followed. Stay with us as we uncover the emotional journey that will touch your heart. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the picturesque garden, where rows of ivory-draped chairs flanked a lush green aisle leading to a floral altar adorned with peonies and wildflowers. The air was filled with soft murmurs of excitement as friends and family gathered, their smiles radiant, their anticipation palpable. This was Emily and Jacob's special day, a celebration of love and a union that promised a bright future. Everything was perfect, the idyllic setting, the harmonious melodies from the string quartet, and the anticipation that lingered like a gentle breeze. Behind a curtain of trees, Emily stood with her father, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched his arm. Her white dress, delicate and flowing like a dream, shimmered under the soft sunlight. Her veil framed her face, and her nervous smile betrayed her mixture of elation and anxiety. Her father gave her a reassuring squeeze, his pride evident in the way his eyes glistened. Emily's heart swelled with love for Jacob, the man she believed was her soulmate. Charming, attentive, and deeply protective, he had swept her off her feet from the moment they met. Their love story felt like destiny, and she was convinced it was the forever kind. As the music shifted, signaling her cue, Emily took a deep breath, stepping onto the aisle with her father. Guests turned to admire her, their faces lighting up with admiration and joy. Emily felt the nerves melting away as she locked eyes with Jacob, who stood tall at the altar in a classic tuxedo. His intense gaze seemed to steady her, and she felt a sense of peace as if nothing could go wrong. This was their moment, the start of a lifetime together. But Jacob's expression shifted for the briefest second, a flicker of something that disappeared almost as quickly as it came. Emily didn't notice, lost in her own emotions, but a storm of thoughts surged in Jacob's mind. He had worked so hard to leave his past behind, to start fresh with Emily. Yet, as he scanned the crowd, his heart froze. Standing at the back of the aisle was a figure he thought he would never see again, Monica. Her silhouette stood stark against the backdrop of light, her face pale but determined, one hand resting on her rounded belly. Monica's presence was like a thunderclap in Jacob's world. The idyllic moment cracked under the weight of her appearance, and whispers rippled through the guests. Emily noticed the shift in energy and the growing tension, but couldn't yet understand its cause. Her father gave her a reassuring smile, assuming it was just pre-wedding jitters. But Emily's chest tightened as she saw Jacob's face pale, his hands clenched, and his gaze fixed on the woman at the back. The music faded into the background as Monica took a step forward, her eyes locked on Jacob's. In that instant, Emily's perfect day began to unravel. She could sense an unspoken connection between them, one that hinted at a truth she wasn't ready to face. Jacob's whisper broke the silence, his voice strained and barely audible as he said her name, Monica. The sound of it shattered Emily's fragile joy, replacing it with a sinking feeling she couldn't shake. The whispers among the guests grew louder as Monica's name echoed faintly through the garden. Emily, standing frozen in the middle of the aisle, felt the air grow heavy with tension. Her heart pounded as she searched Jacob's face for reassurance. But what she saw only deepened her dread. His eyes, wide and filled with guilt, were locked on Monica. It was as if the world around them had disappeared, leaving only the two of them in a silent, charged exchange. Emily's father leaned in, his voice low but steady. "Sweetheart, are you all right? You look pale." She barely heard him. Her mind was spinning, her once perfect vision of this day cracking like glass under the weight of uncertainty. Who was this woman? Why did Jacob look at her with such intensity, such recognition? Monica stood motionless at the end of the aisle, her expression a mix of exhaustion, sadness, and resolve. Her hand rested protectively over her swollen belly, a silent statement that spoke louder than any words. The golden sunlight bathed her figure, highlighting every detail, making her presence impossible to ignore. Finally, she stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm as she spoke. "Jacob, we need to talk." The garden fell silent. The guests, once filled with excitement and joy, now watched in stunned disbelief. Some looked at Emily with pity, while others glanced at Jacob with judgment. Emily's mother, seated in the front row, clutched her hands to her chest, her face a mask of concern. The officiant stood awkwardly at the altar, attempting to maintain composure, but clearly unsure how to proceed. Emily's knees felt weak, and she reached out instinctively, brushing Jacob's arm. "Jacob," she whispered, her voice quivering. "What's going on? Who is she?" Jacob turned to her, his face pale and drawn, but he couldn't meet her eyes. "Emily," he began, but the words faltered, caught in his throat. He glanced back at Monica, who stood only a few steps away now, her gaze unwavering. "I'm sorry," Monica said, addressing Emily directly this time. Her voice was calm, but carried an undeniable weight. "I never wanted to come here like this, but Jacob left me with no choice. I had to find him. He needs to know," she hesitated, then placed both hands on her belly as if to steady herself. "I'm pregnant, and he's the father." The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. Emily's breath caught in her throat, her vision blurring as the revelation crashed over her like a tidal wave. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not here. Not with the man she had trusted with her heart. Her mind screamed for it to be a mistake, a cruel misunderstanding. But the look on Jacob's face confirmed the truth. He wasn't shocked, he was guilty. "Emily, I didn't know," Jacob stammered, his voice desperate. "I swear, I didn't know she was pregnant." "That's your defense?" Emily shot back, her voice sharp with betrayal. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You didn't know? That's supposed to make this better?" Monica watched their exchange, her face softening with regret. "I didn't come here to hurt you," she said to Emily, her voice quieter now. "But I couldn't keep this from him. He has a right to know, and so does our child." Emily's heart broke at the raw honesty in Monica's voice. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all she could do was stand there, trembling, as her dream of a perfect wedding dissolved into chaos. The guests, sensing the gravity of the moment, remained seated, their murmurs subdued. This was no longer a celebration. It was a reckoning. Jacob, caught between the two women, looked utterly lost. He turned to Emily, his voice shaking as he pleaded. "Please, let me explain." "Explain?" Emily interrupted, her tone icy. "You've already said enough." Her eyes darted to Monica, then back to Jacob. "Both of you have." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's perfect day had been reduced to a painful, public confrontation, and she had no idea how to move forward. All she knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. Emily stood in stunned silence, her entire body trembling as if the ground beneath her feet had shifted. The whispers of the crowd became a distant hum, muffled by the deafening thrum of her own heartbeat. Her mother rushed to her side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. But Emily barely felt it. Her gaze darted between Jacob, whose guilt was etched into every line of his face, and Monica, whose steady resolve seemed to pierce through the chaos. "I can't believe this," Emily muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Then louder, with more force. "I can't believe you." Her eyes bore into Jacob with a mix of hurt and anger that seemed to strip away the confidence he had once carried so effortlessly. "You promised me a future. Jacob, you promised me a life together. Was any of it even real?" Jacob opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could he possibly say to make this better? He took a step toward her, but she raised her hand, halting him in his tracks. "Don't," she said firmly, her voice breaking. "Don't come closer." Monica, standing just a few steps away, looked at Emily with an expression that was unexpectedly filled with compassion. "Emily, I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know this isn't fair to you. I don't want to come here, to ruin your wedding day. But I didn't know what else to do. I tried to reach him before, but she glanced at Jacob, her voice trailing off. He never responded. Emily's lip quivered, her anger momentarily giving way to confusion. What do you mean? You try to reach him? Jacob? She turned to him, her voice rising in pitch. Is that true? Did she try to contact you? Jacob looked down at the ground, his jaw tightening as he avoided her gaze. I didn't know it was this serious, he admitted. I thought it was something I could leave behind. His voice was quiet, almost pleading, but it only fueled Emily's fury. Leave behind, Emily repeated, her voice trembling. You thought you could just leave this behind? A woman? A child? She shook her head, her tears finally spilling over. What kind of person does that? Jacob tried to speak, but before he could, Monica stepped forward. I don't blame you for being angry. Emily, she said. Her voice was calm but resolute. You have every right to be, but please understand. I'm not here to take him away from you. I'm here because I have no other choice. My child deserves to know their father, and Jacob deserves the chance to step up. Emily turned to her, her emotions a whirlwind. And what about me? She demanded. What about the life I've been building with him? The future I've been planning? Do I not deserve anything? Her voice cracked, and she covered her mouth, trying to contain the sob that threatened to escape. Monica hesitated, her hand still protectively on her belly. You do, she said softly. You deserve everything. But so does this baby. That's why I came here. Not to destroy your life, but to fight for theirs. Emily's father, who had been silent until now, stepped forward, his expression stern and commanding. That's enough, he said, his deep voice cutting through the tension. This isn't the time or place to air this out. He turned to Jacob, his eyes narrowing. If you're half the man I thought you were, you'll step aside and have this conversation in private. Jacob nodded, his face pale and drawn. You're right, he said quietly. He turned to Emily, his voice trembling. Emily, But she cut him off with a sharp gesture. I don't want to hear it. Not right now. Not in front of everyone. Her voice was cold, but the pain beneath it was unmistakable. The guests sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to leave or stay. As Emily turned on her heel and walked back toward the house where she had gotten ready, her mother hurried after her, her face etched with worry. Jacob stood frozen for a moment before turning to Monica. We need to talk, he said, his voice low but firm. Monica nodded, and the two of them followed Emily's father to a quieter spot behind the garden, leaving the murmuring crowd behind. Inside the house, Emily sank into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Her mother knelt beside her, smoothing her hair and whispering reassurances. But Emily couldn't hear her over the roar of her own thoughts. Her perfect day had turned into a nightmare, and the man she thought she knew had become a stranger. For the first time, she wondered if the life she had dreamed of was even possible anymore, or if it had all been a lie. Behind the garden, in a secluded spot shielded by tall hedges, Jacob and Monica stood face to face, with Emily's father watching from a distance like a silent sentinel. The air was thick with tension, and the soft rustle of leaves only amplified the weight of their unspoken words. Jacob finally broke the silence, his voice hoarse. Monica, I don't even know where to start. How could you come here? Like this? His words held a mixture of frustration and guilt, though his tone lacked the venom one might expect. Monica held his gaze, her posture resolute but her eyes heavy with emotion. I didn't want to. Jacob, she replied evenly. Do you think I wanted to show up at your wedding and disrupt everything? I tried to reach you. I called. I emailed. You ignored every attempt I made. I had no other choice. Her words struck him like a blow, and he closed his eyes, shaking his head. I didn't know, he started, but Monica interrupted him. You didn't want to know, she said, her voice sharpening. You made it clear when you left. You didn't look back. I had to pick up the pieces. Jacob, alone. And then, when I found out I was pregnant, her voice faltered for the first time, and she took a deep breath to steady herself. I had to make sure you knew. Not for me, but for this child. They deserve better. Jacob's face crumpled, the weight of her words pressing down on him. You're right, he said softly. I was a coward. I thought I could just leave everything behind and start over. But now, God, Monica, now I don't even know how to fix this. Monica's expression softened slightly, but there was no mistaking the guarded strength in her voice. It's not about fixing it, Jacob. It's about facing it. You have to decide what kind of man you want to be. For this child. For yourself. I'm not asking for anything more than that. Emily's father stepped forward, his presence commanding enough to silence any lingering excuses Jacob might have offered. She's right, he said firmly. You've got a lot to sort out, Jacob, and you're not going to do it by running away. Not again. Jacob nodded, his shoulders slumping. I'll do whatever it takes, he said quietly. I want to be there for the baby, for Monica. I'll figure it out. But even as the words left his mouth, his thoughts drifted to Emily. He couldn't shake the image of her tear-streaked face, the pain in her eyes when she had looked at him. She deserved better, and he had failed her in the worst way possible. Inside the house, Emily sat at a small vanity, her white dress pooling around her like a forgotten dream. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand. You're stronger than this moment, her mother said gently. But you don't have to decide everything right now. Emily nodded, though the tears on her cheeks betrayed the storm of emotions within her. I loved him, Mom. I trusted him with everything. How do I move forward from this? Her mother squeezed her hand. One step at a time. You don't have to figure it all out today. Just listen to your heart. And don't rush. You'll know what to do when the time is right. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the garden, Emily's father returned. He paused in the doorway, his face serious but composed. Emily, he said softly, they're waiting to talk to you, but only if you're ready. Emily looked at him, then at her reflection in the mirror. Her wedding veil framed her face, but the woman staring back at her felt like a stranger, someone thrust into a reality she hadn't chosen. With a deep breath, she stood and smoothed her dress. I'll talk to them, she said, her voice trembling but determined. But this isn't about saving the wedding. Not anymore. Her mother kissed her forehead. Whatever you decide, we're here for you. As Emily stepped outside and walked toward the quiet corner of the garden where Jacob and Monica waited, she felt a strange clarity settle over her. This wasn't the life she had envisioned, but it was the one she had to face now, and she would face it on her terms. As Emily approached, the soft murmurs of Jacob and Monica's voices fell silent. Jacob turned toward her, his eyes searching hers with a mixture of hope and fear. Monica stood beside him, her posture steady, though the weight of the moment was evident in her expression. Emily stopped a few feet away, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as if trying to hold herself together. I'm here, she said, her voice calm but resolute. Talk. Jacob took a tentative step forward, but Emily's sharp glare rooted him in place. He exhaled shakily and ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find the words. Emily, there's no excuse for what I've done. I wasn't honest with you about my past. I should have been, but I thought I could leave it behind and move forward with you. I was wrong. I see that now. Leave it behind? Emily's voice was bitter, her pain slipping through the cracks in her composure. You mean Monica and your child? How could you even think that was an option? Jacob flinched at the accusation, but before he could respond, Monica spoke. Her tone was measured, but there was a quiet strength in her words. Emily, I don't blame you for being angry. You have every right to be, but this isn't about me trying to take Jacob away from you. I came here because I couldn't let him ignore this any longer. My child deserves a father, and Jacob deserves the chance to be one. Emily's gaze shifted to Monica, her anger softening into something more complicated, something closer to reluctant understanding. Do you think this is easy for me? She asked, her voice trembling. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew the life we were building together. Now I don't know anything. Monica nodded, her expression empathetic. I get it. Truly, I do. But I couldn't let fear stop me from doing what's right for my baby. And I couldn't let Jacob hide from this any longer. Jacob stepped forward again, his voice pleading. Emily, I love you. I want to make this right. I know I've hurt you. and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if I can. But I can't turn away from this. Not from Monica, and not from the baby. I have to face this." Emily's chest tightened, her emotions warring within her. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the regret, and the desire to do better. But she also felt the sting of betrayal, the loss of the trust she had placed in him so freely. She turned her back to them for a moment, her thoughts a whirlwind. "Emily," Monica said softly, breaking the silence, "I didn't come here to break you. I came because I needed Jacob to take responsibility. But I see the pain this has caused you, and I'm sorry for that. Truly." Emily turned back to face them, her eyes brimming with tears. "I need time," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Time to figure out who I am in all of this. Time to decide what I want. Jacob, if you're serious about stepping up for your child, then do it. Be the man you claim you want to be. But don't expect me to just stand here and forgive you. Trust isn't something you can repair overnight." Jacob nodded, his shoulders sagging under the weight of her words. "I understand," he said quietly. "I'll give you the space you need, but I'm not giving up on us." Emily looked at Monica, her expression softening. "I don't blame you," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "But I need to step back from all of this. I can't be part of whatever this is, not right now." Monica nodded, respect evident in her gaze. "I understand, Emily. I wish you didn't have to go through this." With a final glance at Jacob, Emily turned and walked away, her steps steady even as her heart felt like it was breaking. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she needed to heal, on her terms, in her own time. Weeks passed, and the chaos of that day began to settle into something resembling clarity. Jacob and Monica worked together to prepare for the baby's arrival. Though their relationship remained platonic, they found a mutual respect in their shared commitment to the child. Jacob attended doctor's appointments, read parenting books, and began to embrace the role of a father. Emily, meanwhile, focused on herself. She spent time with friends and family, rediscovering the parts of herself that had been overshadowed by her heartbreak. She began journaling, reflecting on the life she wanted and the kind of love she deserved. Slowly, she started to heal. One day, as she sat in her favorite cafe, her phone buzzed with a message from Monica. It was a picture of a newborn baby swaddled in a blanket, her tiny face peaceful. "Maya arrived this morning. She's healthy and perfect. Thank you for everything." Emily smiled, her heart swelling with an unexpected warmth. She typed a reply, "Congratulations. She's beautiful. Wishing you all the best." As she put her phone down, she realized that she felt lighter. The pain of the past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined her. She was ready to move forward stronger, wiser, and with a heart open to whatever came next. Thank you for watching this heartfelt story on Empathy Stories. Life's twists and turns often reveal the strength within us and the importance of forgiveness and growth. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more moving tales that inspire reflection and understanding. Your support means everything. Until next time, take care and stay compassionate.